How many times have you heard these phrases? I'm saving up to buy a home, or I need to buy a house. Renting is just throwing a money away. It's just like lighting money on fire. Today we're going to break down and examine the question, should I rent or buy a home? It's not a simple question. There's lots to consider here. And as with everything on this channel, there's lots of things to think about on both sides of this question. I have a different opinion on this, like kind of a strong opinion on this one. Simply put, owning a house can be a great thing. But I think too many people are too eager to own a home, and this can cause many people to make a bad financial decision. There are psychological factors at play here because, it is kind of a flex to own your own home, and there's a lot of keeping up with the Joneses here. But I think many times the obsession with owning property causes people to make a bad decision with their money, and this money can better be used elsewhere. People have FOMO with prices continually rising and a lot of other factors involved, and I get that. But buying a house too early or too expensive is a great way to paycheck yourself. People rush into it. They don't put enough time and thought into this huge decision. Again, buying a house is one of the biggest financial decisions you can make next to getting married, and it can be a bad decision a lot of the time. Now, I'm not here to attack people who have houses or people who want a house or people who rent. I'm just sharing my thoughts and considerations so that you can make a good decision for yourself. Because buying a house or condo can be a great decision if done right, and a catastrophic one if done wrong. After watching this, I want you to have some things in your mind as to what to think about before buying a home in your specific situation. Just some things to consider, before buying, especially if it's your first home. So here we go. So just some words of caution before watching the video. Buying a house just to have a house is a mistake. It's kind of a psychological thing. It's a big decision, and you shouldn't rush into it at all. Too many people are in a rush to buy a home basically for no reason, which can handicap their ability to be free in the future. In this video, I'm talking about anything you own, like a house or condo, really any property. And I'm also not talking about buying the house as an investment and a landlord where you're renting it out. That's different than what I'm discussing. That's a totally different ballgame. I'm talking about a residence where you actually buy the house and you live in it. And as always, this video is not professional financial advice. Make your own decisions. Don't just trust some idiot from Wisconsin like me on the internet. This is also unique to the United States. I'm not very familiar with housing markets in other countries. So let's continue. Just a little bit about my situation and why I haven't bought a house yet. So I'm 28, doing pretty well financially, and I've never had a house. And in my situation, I never viewed it as a good decision for me to make. So I have the ability to buy one. I considered it a few times, and I even got approved for a loan at one point to get one. But I never pulled the trigger, and I didn't for a variety of reasons. And now I'm happy with my decision. In my situation, I considered buying a house or a condo in the Milwaukee area in 2021 as I was going to move there for a new job. And I had some voices in my head that society, would always tell me, rent is bad, rent is lighting money on fire, I must own a home, you got to buy a home. And so I did some research. Rent for a nice place where I wanted to live was about $1,500 a month. And then to get a reasonably priced house or condo on, maybe a 30-year fixed, it was, $1,000 to $1,200 a month in mortgage. You got to consider other stuff. So I was looking into property taxes. I was looking into HOA fees if it was a condo, looking into maintenance. And eventually I discovered wow, there's a lot that goes into the house outside of a mortgage. And it was kind of surprising to me how high that number was. So after doing the math, if I'm well, if I just invest some of this money in the stock market instead of all these other things, I might be actually a better financial decision than owning a condo. Even if the house is going up in value and renting is more than the mortgage, there's so many other fees to consider. And plus, I didn't really know where I was going to be in the long term, especially considering it was a new job. If I didn't like it, I didn't want to be locked into something. So when I ran the numbers, I just decided, maybe buying a property is not for me right now. And I was probably about 24, 25 at the time. So instead, I decided to invest in stocks, and these stocks ended up going up a lot in the last few years, and they've been paying me dividends this whole time and continue to pay me. So instead of buying a house, which could have been this liability for me to maintain, and yeah, the prices went up a little bit, but instead now I have a large value, large sum of money in the stock market, and this stock market, it's paying me in dividends every month to just do nothing. It's an investment that's appreciating and paying me, as opposed to a house which costs money to maintain and it's appreciating. So I'm glad I didn't do that. I'm happy with my decision because houses can and do eat money. One thing I loved about renting was if something's broken, if the washing machine's broken, I don't have to buy a new one. I just call someone and they fix it, and I don't have to pay for it, worry about it or anything. And with the house, it's different. You're the one on the hook for those bills. Again, I'm not hating on buying a house. This was how I looked at the problem, and there's a lot of costs that go into owning a home. Whereas renting, it's a little bit easier, a little more flexible. So let's talk about the current environment and what affects housing prices. So things to look at right now is the average cost of housing and interest rates. So the higher the interest rates are, the more you're going to spend on your loan, the higher cost your loan is to borrow money. So right now it's about 6% on a 30-year fixed. It's been going down for a while, but it's been up recent terms. And in theory, there's an inverse correlation between interest rates and housing prices. It's not always true, not always in practice, but it makes sense. If it costs more to get a loan, less people will be buying those loans. That'll bring prices down. However, if you look at this graph, overall, and this is a little bit outdated by about a year, but overall, housing prices have been going up consistently, kind of regardless of what the rates have been doing. So quick note, this chart does show that the housing prices have been going up, and I do believe this is a reason people have a FOMO, like they want to make sure they have a house, so the prices, when they keep going up, they're part of that, and that makes sense. Housing prices have gone up, although not as much as the stock market has. Stock market returns more per year on average. Kind of right now, it's hard to say if it's a good time to buy a house because there are high interest rates compared to the last, 10 years or so. And the prices of houses are high. So a lot of people are saying interest rates are going to come down, which they probably will. But, inflation's a risk too. So it's hard to say what's the right decision here. I don't know. I'm just giving you some information. So a lot of stuff is dependent on location too when buying a home. Like some places are in a booming market. Sometimes inventory is low in areas. Sometimes inventory is high in areas. Sometimes there's new construction. I'd say overall right now, housing prices seem to be a little higher and the rates seem to be a little bit higher, although we expect those to come down. So just some factors to consider. So next, let's talk about the hidden costs of buying a house. So a house can really be a liability if you do it wrong, but it can be an asset if you do it right. So a lot of other factors, obviously, outside of mortgage. First, let's talk about property taxes. So they vary significantly by state, county, or even city, and definitely impact your overall costs. Like I remember when I was looking for condos in Milwaukee, property taxes could be $6,000 to $7,000 a year, which is like a lot, and that could be considered throwing money away in quotes because it's something you never get to see. It's the cost of owning the property that you'll have to pay. Okay, so next let's talk about maintenance. So think of maintenance as when you have a washing machine and that breaks, and that could be thousands of dollars, or you have to buy a new refrigerator, or something happens to your window, and some insurance can help with that, but you do have to maintain your home, and stuff that breaks in your home, which will happen, is your responsibility. So usually people allocate a certain percentage of the housing cost in total, maybe 3% as an example, and set that aside each year for maintenance, expenses, changing light bulbs, that kind of stuff. So another thing to consider, and this could be thousands of dollars a year as well, an HOA fee. So if this is a condo, you have a homeowners association fee, which takes care of things like mowing lawns and stuff like that. So another thing to consider could be a cost, could be a couple $100 a month. It's hard to say, can vary a lot. Another thing is insurance. So you have to pay for sometimes mortgage insurance, depending on your down payment, property insurance, and just a ton of random costs, to protect yourself from further costs, basically. So yet another thing to factor into it. Another hidden cost would be, depending on where you live, it could be a dangerous area. So my family has a place in Florida, and it's getting hit by hurricanes, and that's a risk too, because you have to get flooding insurance. Sometimes if they don't offer flooding insurance, you have to take on the risk. And I know this has cost, my family a good amount of money to repair from these hurricanes. So some things dependent on location as well. You got to think of inflation. Although inflation can drive up the prices of housing, it also drives up the price to maintain the house, utilities, maintenance, renovations, that kind of stuff. So let's go through a checklist of when you should buy a house. So I would say, as a rule of thumb, if you will be living in an area for a longer time horizon, I'm thinking 7 years plus, or you plan on settling down there or something like that, you found a stable work there or good opportunities, it might not be a bad thing to buy a house, especially if you have a safety cushion, enough for emergencies, and you have enough for a good down payment. I believe you have to make a 20% down payment in order to avoid an extra insurance called PMI, private mortgage insurance. So that's one thing that's another thing to consider. Another one would be you have a stable income, because you have to you owe the bank on this loan. You got to be able to make that. So you need some money coming in, or a lot of money just to start out with. You want to make the mortgage well within your means so you're not stretching yourself thin at all. You want to make sure you can afford these hidden costs like, fridge breaking, pipes bursting, that kind of stuff. And if you're in a dangerous area like somewhere in Florida, comfortable with the risks, comfortable with the hurricanes, if you don't have the above, it might be best to wait. Like, it could be a bad decision if you're doing more than you can afford. It also helps to like the area, make sure it's got good schools. If you're having a family, it's safe. It's got grocery stores nearby and stuff to do. That's also a big plus. So is a house a good investment? It definitely can be if you meet this criteria we just talked about and are in a nice growing area with an appreciating market and good opportunities. And yes, it can go up in value, and then you can sell the house for a lot more than you bought it later on. You can also do things like rent out the house in the future, and there are also a lot of tax benefits to owning houses as well. So these houses do appreciate. I mean, I showed you the chart earlier. House prices do go up, and it's not a bad thing. Like, I'm not trying to make it sound like buying a house is a bad thing. I just want you to think about things that could be important when it comes to buying a house. So when should you rent? Number one is you need the freedom. So in my situation, I was like, I don't know where I'm going to be in a few years. And, if I want to leave my job or do something, I don't want to have this big expensive, house. And plus, when you buy and sell houses, you have to pay fees associated with that. So you want to make sure you're buying one, you're in it for the long haul. If you don't have a stable income, obviously the bank will probably not even approve you for a loan, but you just don't want to put yourself in that situation. Also, if you don't have enough for a down payment or any sort of safety cushion, you should definitely wait. If it's not a good buying opportunity, so think of if prices are sky high and rates are also sky high, you might want to wait. If you have some other investments that are high yielding that you want to consider, that's math that you have to make on your end. So what happens if you make a bad decision? Well, you can lose a lot of money. If you buy and sell a house quickly, you're almost guaranteed to lose money unless you fixed it up or something like that. And it can handicap your financial future. I mean, you could be paycheck to paycheck, unable to afford surprise costs and have to take on more debt. And it could end up being a bad decision. So you have to be very careful. Some alternatives for, putting your money into a house would be, again, stock market. You could house hack. You could share your house with people and rent them out. You own the house and then you rent it out to people. That's an option. Overall point of this video is don't feel pressure to get a house just to have a house. It's overrated. It's a lot of work. You got to mow the lawn. You got to pay for everything. There's pros and cons to it. It can be good. Just be careful. So hope you got something out of this. I want you to succeed and crush it with your finances, and let me know what you think. Do you own a house? Do you not? Why or why not? So let me know. Peace out, everyone.